And here we are live now with a little delay. My fault. We are on the 166th conversation of I Need Living Conversations. I'm Julian Catari, and this is Blue Heron Woman, and we get together each week to talk about many different subjects that go into the depths of what normally is very shallow. So that's maybe a good theme, I guess, for this set of conversations. The fact that we go into depth of many different subjects, and we've been exploring now for one session. This is the second session of a series of sessions of conversations about the dark abyss of the system. And so you guys started on money on the last one, and that's a whole huge subject, and that everybody's very much aware of. Welcome, everyone, or not. Well, I want to say that to think about the people, like, for example, that are in Rumble, and that it is becoming, you start getting like some information about the fiduciary system and the limits and so many of the issues around money. But there's so many other things, right, around money, or I mean around the dark abysses of the system that are wrong. And we're going to go into this, I guess.
Well, if we don't know the history, repeat it. And the reality is this is in the absence of the sacred, because we have no sacredness in our world. We have an absent God.
Right.
That's off planet. So in the absence of the sacred, this is the bloody abyss. And we're going to get into the blood.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're going to get into the blood, the running blood.
Yeah. Okay.
Of this
mm-hmm.
in the next couple of weeks. But no one knows what our money system really is. They can bitch about it all they want, but they think they know it is. But this is why I've been presenting what it really is, that it's a debt-based system. And like a game of musical chairs, the system requires that someone must eventually fail.
Mm-hmm.
Go lay down. Sorry, I have a dog that's being crazy.
Okay.
So we have to understand this.
Right. Yeah. So general people don't know that. I mean, that's
the
for sure.
The system is set up so that someone must fail. Are you okay with that? To anyone out there, are you really okay with a system that is, because if it's not your turn today, it's going to be your turn tomorrow, because it's set up that someone has to fail, and we have to look at this. This is why we are OWL. I'm really seriously shifting from OWL Dojo because of the connotation that dojo has with martial arts, and we're not martial arts, into the OWL Council House, which is much more of a Native American aspect.
I like that.
So this is why in the OWL Council House, our first phase is we must. This is what a shaman does. This is what an owl does. Look into the darkness and go into the abyss of this darkness and go, no, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We must come to the place where in the journey of our self-esteem, we say, no, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. We're not going to play this system anymore.
Right.
So,
and that's what we're doing.
Yes, absolutely.
That's what we're here for.
Yeah, absolutely. The Federal Reserve, I think I covered this last week, but oh yes, I did, because I left off with so the Federal Reserve unabashedly admits that it purposely maintains a scarcity of money. But let that sink in. And I left off with this. If governments were required to get money for war from the people, there would be no war. How many of anyone listening would be willing to actually donate your dollars for a war?
Most people.
You think most people would be willing to donate their dollars for a war?
Well, not all their dollars, but I have seen that a lot of people believe in like helping out in the war. Like that's a common.
I don't think so. Okay. I don't think so. They don't think that, no. You're thinking of these silly little wars of the war on drugs and the war on diabetes and the war on this and the war on alcohol and the war on that. Yes, people are willing to help out for that, but I'm talking about real on full scale war. The war in Iraq. How many people would actually be willing to fund?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I have no idea.
The war on Iraq. We need to ask ourselves this. How many of us would have been willing to fund the juntas of Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Uruguay, Brazil?
The juntas. Yeah, okay.
These
Yeah,
wars
nobody,
that
not a
killed.
lot of people. Well, some people did actually like.
That's not what I'm
like
getting
that.
at. How
Yeah.
many of us would be willing if we knew the cost? If we were told that for every dollar we spent, 2,000 lives were going to be lost, would we be willing to fund this war?
Well, I don't think anybody should really like support war in any way. I mean, that's what I would think.
That's what I'm saying. We've got to understand that if governments were required to get money for the war from the people, how many of us really would give money for the war? None of us would.
Mm.
That's the truth. We are humans, and it's our innate nature to be good, not to make war on people.
Right.
Not in the way we make war on people.
Yeah, there's no point in war.
You know, one of the things that the white colonizer settlers didn't understand about the Indians was that when they made war, they didn't go for this total annihilation. It was only for, well, you know, you did this to me, so I'm going to until I count coup.
Mhm.
Right? Then the war is just done. It's just done. They couldn't understand that. It's just done. There's no years long. There were never years long wars among the Indians. They were maybe a day long, maybe hours long, maybe they
Mhm.
they didn't fight wars the way we fight wars.
Yeah, and it does reveal that it's just a business. It's just a Like
War is a business. You're absolutely right. War is a privatized business, and we're going to go into that
and
Not
maybe the biggest
tonight,
one.
in the next couple of weeks.
Hmm. So let's take us to the bloody details.
So tonight's not going to be very bloody, but we're going to get bloody.
Okay.
So the effect on the economy of monetizing government debt is that it causes a general increase in prices, meaning inflation. Inflation has been called a hidden tax. Because remember, in the 14th Amendment, which we talked about last week, the Congress set up the IRS, the Internal Revenue System, to collect internal money to cover its problems.
Mhm.
Okay, so inflation is a private internal hidden tax to pay for their fuck-ups.
Mhm.
That's what it is. A well-known economist named Milton Friedman, who we're going to talk about, maybe in 3-4 weeks' time.
Okay.
He is the one behind the shock and terror tactics of the juntas in Brazil,
Oh.
Argentina, Chile, Bolivia, Uruguay.
Hmm.
Absolutely. It was his philosophies that caused the millions of lives lost down there.
Was he a CIA agent?
No, he is an
No?
economist.
Economist, okay. But that worked for the CIA, maybe.
No,
Not even? Okay.
not even.
Influenced then the CIA
He
operation.
believed in shock and awe tactics.
Okay. He just described the strategy for war, okay?
Yes, just right.
Mm-hmm.
And my number one goal right now is to get rid of the damn Ford sitting in my driveway. I will never drive another Ford again because it was the Ford Foundation, the Ford charity that paid for Chilean students and Argentinian students Bolivian students, Uruguayan students to come to Milton Friedman School of Economics in Chicago that caused the juntas.
Oh, that's a fact to
Oh,
know.
yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. I will never drive a Ford again.
Mm.
And I will get rid of this Ford in my driveway as soon as I possibly can.
Okay.
In fact, I'm saying here now, I will no longer tolerate the Ford Motor Credit Corporation, Ford Corporation in any way, shape, or form. It's got to meet its end.
Mm.
Any corporation that is willing to fund blood, death, and torture of citizens, no, I'm not going to tolerate.
Mm-hmm.
And we humans have to come to that. We're just not going to tolerate it.
We have to stop the war, and that's starts by what you buy and
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
And
it
how-
doesn't
and how do you-
matter
and-
it doesn't matter that those juntas happened in the 1970s and they were doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It's the foundation. How have they shapeshifted? How are they still funding the same thing and just not in mass, not in plain view, on an open site?
Hmm.
So, Milton Friedman, he argued that inflation is a monetary phenomenon. This means that increase in prices is not due to goods costing more, but that the money is worth less. Other economists say that inflation is caused by too much money circulating. The realistic answer to this is that inflation is not caused by the amount of money circulation. It's rather due to the fact that the money has been improperly issued and misallocated.
Hmm.
In this economy system, the people of the general population have been totally cut out of the decision process of issuing and allocating money, as we've been cut out of the process of anything. And we just willingly accept it because it's the best for us.
Hmm.
The abuses this allows then are massive expenditures for weapons, military interventions, foreign aid to support client governments which benefit the banks and the money rich, well-connected few.
Mm-hmm.
Our current money system pumps money from the people who work for a living and have no financial net worth. To the system, the ultra poor aren't even considered. I'm not ultra poor,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I might be, considering that I live paycheck to paycheck and I have no net worth other than a lot of animals,
Mhm.
right? That's some of the comments on Facebook when I posted right before the new year that we had 15 babies on the ground. I say one of my friends posted affluence, and I'm no, not affluence. It's an expansion of my family, not affluence.
You turned it right into money on a comment. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably not. That wasn't a sensitive comment at all.
I haven't ever replied to that comment other than that. So, the debt trap is the bane of us who have no financial net worth. Debt in this system is destructive in two ways. First, because of the interest, the usury that must be paid for the use of money, bank credit. And second, because of the collateral that must be forfeited when the debtor is unable to make payments. So the chronic insufficiency of money ensures that there will be, it's a given,
Mm-hmm.
there will be forfeitures.
Mm.
We have to understand this and we have to say, no more to this. We're not going to tolerate this. It's interesting to note that the word mortgage comes from the roots that mean death pledge.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay, didn't know that.
Yeah. So information seems to be the essential quality of money. What kind of information does it and should it carry? Maybe it should carry information about merit, meaning that the possessor of money has delivered value to the community and so is entitled to receive like value. That seems to be the common, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when money is improperly issued, the information it carries is very polluted from its source. By issuing money to privileged clients of the bank monopoly at very favorable terms, and by demanding higher interest rates from the rest, the bank system redistributes money from the producers to the privileged. No debtor is an island paying interest all alone. Everyone pays the cost of interest, even those who borrow money indirectly. Interest costs are included in the price of everything we buy. Lending money at interest, either directly or through financial intermediaries, is one of the primary mechanisms by way the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So what is money? None of us ever stop to consider what is money. We just think it's that paper in our wallets.
Mm-hmm.
One answer is that money is an information system used to deploy human effort. But there are really three kinds of definitions we should consider. There's a practical definition that describes money's distinguishing feature in common practice. There's a functional definition that says what money does. And there's an essential definition that tells what money actually is. So the most practical definition of money then is that money is anything that is generally accepted as a means of payment. So then money is whatever people collectively say it is. So if we collectively said, and I've talked on this before, if we collectively said peach pits are going to be our form of money, the Federal Reserve would just be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple.
Right.
But we think we're bound to the system.
Mm-hmm.
We think we have no power. As soon as we realize we have the power and say, yeah, no, we're not going to.
As soon as we get our power back.
Yeah.
And we
It
are the
might
ones
mean-
taking it
It
from
might
us.
mean we have to do without a few niceties for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But it
Yeah,
only
of course,
takes
it means you got to get out of the comfort shelf life system. And
It really
after-
only takes about 4 weeks for something to disappear from the market.
Okay.
So say, for instance, if we all said, yeah, no, we're not going to chew gum anymore, it would take, and nobody bought gum, it would take 4 weeks for gum to totally disappear. Be gone.
Wow.
Flip.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to remember. No man is an island. And that's what we're going to discuss when we go into the presence of the sacred. Because in the
Okay.
absence of the sacred, everyone is an island and no one can make a difference.
Okay.
So, money is whatever people collectively say it is. There are 5 functional definitions of money that most of us know of. 1, money is a medium of exchange. 2, it's a standard of value. 3, it's a unit of account. 4, it's a store of value. And 5, it's a unit of deferred payment. But an essential function is that it's an information system used to deploy human effort. If we think about this and let it percolate like a coffee pot,
Mhm.
it becomes clear that our acceptance of money is based on its informational content. A problem with these functional definitions, which were the practical ones I just listed, is that they're mutually contradictory. Money as a medium of exchange is really opposed to money being a store of value. Think about it, right?
Mhm.
I told you money, the functional definitions is that money is a medium of exchange. Second, it's a standard of value, right? But if it's a medium of exchange, how can it be a storage of value? If it's a medium of exchange, it must be spent. If it's a store of value, it must be held. So maybe a better functional definition of money then would be a medium of exchange adapted or designed to meet the inadequacy of a barter system. And finally, a second essence of money is an agreement to accept something that in itself may have no fundamental utility to us, but we're sure we can exchange it for something that does.
Mhm.
So when studying history historically, when studying money historically, there were three forms of money. There was commodity money, symbolic money, and credit money. Commodity money, of course, was the exchange of things like salt, cattle, grain, and tobacco for items one desired but didn't have. And as we discussed before, a commodity is something that's made by human hands. That none of these were made by human hands. So none of these are truly commodities.
Mm-hmm.
Paper notes and coins are symbolic money, and we've just talked about credit money, which is the only thing we know.
Mm-hmm.
While we hold Federal Reserve notes in our hands or pesos, that's all just symbolic. It's all credit with some symbolic. In simple mutual credit system, money springs easily into existence whenever it is needed for exchange. In the current system of money and banking, however, an originator of money must first obtain authorization from a commercial bank by applying for a loan to put money into circulation. And then a lot of times for credit worthiness, something must be mortgaged. Play of death, right? Or we enter into death gamble to put money into circulation. We thought about this, right? If we really thought about the term financing as a mortgage, and the only term we use mortgages for is for our homes. But anytime we did this for our vehicles, for anything, we're entering into death gamble. How willing would we really be to do this? So when we take out a loan, we are the issuer of money, not the bank. Bank hasn't loaned you anything. It simply converted the value of whatever we mortgaged or death gambled into a negotiable form. And if we didn't death gamble anything, then our signature is converted into a negotiable form. And this process is called monetization. The problem is, once again, that the extra amount of money we require to pay the interest on the loan is not available in the circuit. It can only come from somebody else taking out a loan. So let's think about this. If the bank were honest, they would have to, let's say, they would have to credit our account with $200,745.60 for a loan of $100,000 with 8% interest to be paid over 20 years. That's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
That's how, if they were honest, that's what they would do. Right? But they don't. They only give us 100,000. So every time we write a check to make the payment with interest added, we are actually writing a bad check because there's no money to cover that. And we all live in fear of bad checks. But every time we write a payment check, we're writing a bad check because there's no money there to cover the check that we've just written. It's silly. It's awesome. It's awful. It's awfully awesome. They bamboozled us into, right? Into the moral of, oh my God, I can't write a bad check. But every time we write a check to make a payment on a loan, we're writing a bad check. So let's say we actually pay off the loan, then that money gets extinguished and we redeem our mortgage. But let's say we earn some money created by someone else's loan. So every time we make wages, we're making money off of someone else's loan. We're getting money from that person's loan. Now that someone else will never be able to earn back enough money to redeem his or her mortgage. So the charging of interest on bank loans causes a deficiency of money because they don't print that money. They don't make that money. And guarantees that there will be a steady parade of losers. The requirements of banks then is that they make loans faster than they retire loans. So there must be a continual expansion of bank credit money. If there is not, the result is depression. The problem is the interest, not the using of bank credit money. The imposition of interest creates an unstable condition in which the money supply always lags behind the growing amount of debt owed to banks. This is why back in the Sumerian times, they just wrote off the debt at the end of the year. Gone, because it's unreal. It's
Right.
just, right? There's nothing real about that. It's just unreal. Inevitably, then a point is reached in which the people are unwilling to bear any more debt burden, and then a way has to be found to generate money. And this was the case of the Great Depression. So from that point on, the government became the borrower of last resort, meaning that when private debt can't be monetized anymore, the Federal Reserve will monetize the government's deficits to keep the money supply from shrinking. The monetary policies of this determine then whether money is easy or tight, and whether monetization of government debt will be sufficient to provide private borrowers with the amounts of money needed to pay what they owe to the banks, or whether it will fall short. So the Fed has the power to decide whose interests will be favored and whose will be harmed. Is that freedom?
Do we know what freedom is?
No. None of us know what freedom is, realistically.
Mm.
So, in all this talk about bank credit and monetization, how do they do it? Well, with computers. So let's talk about technology.
Okay. The new form of money.
Yeah. So the New York World's Fair of 1939 and 1940 emblazoned into the public mind a set of expectations for technology. The most dramatic visions were within the corporate pavilions, dioramas of sparkling clean, 7-tiered techno cities, monorails transporting people at 200 miles an hour, humans flying about with rocket packs. The DuPont, we all know DuPont, right? The maker of the nonstick system inside our pans, by the way, which is very toxic. What was that initially made for? Tanks for war.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Right now we're being sold it to cook with, so it gets into our systems and makes us sick.
Mm-hmm.
The DuPont exhibit contained the typical home of the future, synthetic everything. Outer space exhibit showed smiling white Americans living happily inside domed environments on other planets. The frontiers of science and medicine exhibit predicted the conquering of all disease, the extension of our lifespan, and the elimination of insect blight by pesticides, and the end of poverty. Has this happened? We are now 80 years past that World's Fair. I would say poverty's gotten even worse.
Mm-hmm. Totally, yeah. I see it.
So the more than 45 million people attended the New York World's Fair during this 2-year run. All of them experienced what was basically an advertisement for a corporate planned future. Following a decade of depression, such a dream seemed wonderful. The DuPont dream could be everyone's dream. The images from the World's Fair affected the way those 45 million people lived their lives. That the vision was merely a corporate, because corporations are not living things, they exist on paper only. Representation of the future never occurred to the vast majority of these 45 million people. That there might be problems associated with that vision, or that there were alternatives to it, was never indicated. So, the American dream, what is it? Everything all these immigrants pouring across the border are coming for, the American dream. Casteism, poverty, that's what they're coming for. They don't know that. Anyway.
They don't know what they're getting.
Did I sound cynical? I might be cynical because I've been spending days and weeks writing this bloody abyss bullshit that we all so eagerly support.
Mm.
So in 1942, B.F. Goodrich, Tire, advertisement proclaimed, following our victory in this war will come a new America, an America which will startle the world because of the way people create. And oh my goodness, we're going to go so far into the startle concept that it's going to make you puke.
Okay.
Oh, it will. It will. Oh, it's just awful. And then the virtues of appliances and frozen foods, clothes made of plastic were promoted nonstop. DuPont was promising better things for better living through chemistry. Westinghouse, which was refrigerators and washers and dryers, right, was saying there's a lift to living electronically. A lift.
Lift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lift in circumstances, I guess what they were meaning.
Okay.
So a 1949 report argued that the production capacity of the U.S. could support a population of 300 million people at 8 times the 1949 standard of living. Ronald Reagan was the radio voice of the General Electric ad campaigns of that era. And many years later, when he was president, he employed the same kind of rhetoric. The new value system that was sold in the 40s and 50s was designed to fuel the massive expansion of the U.S. industrial and marketing sectors in history. The American way of life became an advertising theme. It drew an explicit equation between how much you consumed and how American you were. During the Truman-Eisenhower years, the American ideal of consumerism was directly in opposition with Russia's emphatically non-consumerist stance. In the 1950s, buying a washing machine was a blow against communism. And patriotic consumerist mood was gaining speed. So to be patriotic, you had to consume, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 1950s also brought the concept of planned obsolescence, meaning that we're going to make things that last for only this amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And even it doesn't matter that they will last longer than that. You've got to get rid of it in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the local mores required replacing your car at least every 2 years. This value system incorporated key attitudes. Number one, technological innovation is good. It's always good. It aids health. It saves labor. It is the engine that drives economic growth, which in turn drives the American dream standard of living upward, which benefits all people. No, doesn't benefit hardly anyone.
Mm.
Technological innovation, number two, technological innovation promotes democracy, freedom, and leisure. And someday, every place, everybody's house will look like the DuPont diorama of the World's Fair. Everything's synthetic. And if you want to see the mountains, you're just going to pop up a screen on your wall so you can see. It's inevitable. You can't turn back the clock. To say the public had no participation in the vast changes that rapidly took place is not accurate. And by our ancestors of the era silence, they gave their approval. There was no language of technological evaluation then, nor is there now. The parameters of discussion, even the parameters of thought, were and still are defined by the corporate and scientific institutions. Corporate includes government because our government is a corporation. Whether it's federal or not, it's still a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
No formal means existed or exists by which ordinary people could or can engage in discussions and hear the pros and cons of what was happening and what does happen. So 75 years or more later, we humans are hurtling toward a crisis driven by the insatiable need to feed resources to the technological machine and to consume them as commodities. So we are at an appropriate, and we have been at an appropriate time for many, many years to question whether this path we have chosen and celebrate it has lived up to its promise. But we never stop to think about that. Over these last 75 to 80 years, new technologies have been advertised as enhancing freedom, happiness, empowerment, health, and physical comfort, or else as reducing work while also providing jobs, serving democracy, and making life more beautiful and pleasant. Over time, the aggregate of such assertions created our fantasies, and we didn't and haven't dreamed anything really during this time.
Hmm.
The people of the 1940s and 1950s believed all this crap, and we still believe them now. Have these promises been realized? And by what standards do we judge the success or failure of this path we follow, this train that we've been riding at more than 200 miles an hour? I propose that the basic minimum of points to consider would be that a society keep its population healthy, peaceful, and contented. All members should have, like the Incas provided, sufficient food to eat, a place to live, and a sense of participation in a shared community purpose. Everyone should have access to the collective wisdom and knowledge of the society, and should expect that life will be spiritually and emotionally fulfilling for themselves and for future generations. These are bare minimum standards, and we're not meeting any of them. Hardly. This, in turn, implies awareness, care, and respect for Earth Mother's life support systems. People who celebrate technology say that it has brought us improved standards of living, which means greater speed. We can travel faster and obtain more objects of information sooner and information sooner, right? Greater choice. Equate it with freedom of choice is the ability to choose among jobs and commodities, but not the actual choice to say, no, I don't want 5G. Greater choice, greater leisure, because technology eased the burden and time involved in work, and greater luxury, more commodities, and increased material comfort. Yet none of these benefits inform us about the human satisfaction, happiness, security, or the ability to sustain our life on Earth. Does getting places quicker make us more contented and fulfilled? I don't think so. Or does the greater choice of commodities qualify with love, friendship, and meaningful work? So, for example, when TV first came out, programs only ran from 4 p.m. till maybe midnight, and not every household could afford a TV. So watching TV became a community affair. It was a time for mingling, socializing, and watching. But as technology advanced, it has pushed us into isolation in our houses. Every house has a TV now, and now every room in every house has a TV, if not more than one. Maybe every bathroom even has a TV now.
Yeah.
And at least in America. Right? So as for leisure, what passes for leisure is just simply time killing, watching TV or buying things. So our choices, watching TV or buying things, are pretty much. Stone Age societies had more than twice the amount of leisure time that we do today, which they used to investigate spiritual matters, personal relationships, and, pleasure-focused sex. If we think about it and include the time needed to earn the money to pay for and repair all the expensive time-saving gadgets that we now have in our lives, modern technology actually deprives us of time. So let's look at some statistics, and these statistics are very old, but they will do. So in 1989, the national murder rate in the U.S. had reached more than 30,000 per year, and this number has been daily increasing since then. In 1990, the U.S. prison population passed the 1 million mark. As is now, the rate of incarceration in the U.S. is so high that if the prisons created a city, it would be the 5th largest city in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
This represents the highest per capita rate of incarceration, and this hasn't ever stopped. It's simply increasing. In 1988, the figures indicated that more than 13% of the U.S. was living in poverty, and I venture to say that this has increased by leaps and bounds. In the late 1990s, 3 million Americans were homeless. 25% of American hospital beds were filled by mental patients. So according to the Fed, the top 10% of American families own 78% of all private business, 50% of real estate, and 72% of corporate stock. I believe that an anthropologist from Mars would conclude that our society is not functioning well at all.
Mhm.
They would be like, damn. I don't know what the fuck you humans think you're doing. This doesn't seem like a wonderful life.
No.
Considering the violence, self-destruction, insanity, and unequal distribution of almost everything, yeah, we're not doing well.
Mhm.
Given that technology was supposed to make life better and given its apparent failure in both the social and environmental spheres, shouldn't reason dictate that we should sharply question the wild claims we've accepted and still accept about technology? Especially since the operating homilies remain the same. You can't stop progress. Once the genie is out of the bottle, you can't put it back, and technology is here to stay. So we just have to find ways to use it better.
Hmm.
80 years of this hasn't changed. And we had just drink a hook, line, and sinker.
Mhm.
In reality, these are rationalizations to cover up a culture-wide passivity, a failure to take a look at the shadows and upend things. The most obvious problem is the manner in which technology is introduced to us. The first waves of description are invariably optimistic and even utopian, always. This is because in capitalist societies, all early descriptions of new technologies come from their inventors and people who stand to gain from their acceptance. The information we're fed describes the technology solely in terms of their best case use. This is so even when the inventors have significant knowledge of terrible downside possibilities. Nuclear power is the single exception to this problem, and since we seem to celebrate widely that we are the only species who can destroy our planet, this situation is just normal to us, and we've raised the stupid bar by assuming that no one will ever press the button on that technology.
Hmm.
If we live in the cities and suburbs from morning to night, we walk through a world that is totally manufactured, a creation of human invention. In the city, you are surrounded by pavement, machinery, gigantic concrete structures, automobiles now with computers in them, airplanes, computers, appliances, television, electric lights, artificial air have become the universe you interact with in a city. All these things are information, and that they shape how you think, and in the absence of a natural reality, what you think and know. So as you relate to the objects of our own creation, you begin to merge with them and assume some of their characteristics. So you become a machine, just like everything around you is a machine.
Mhm.
So for example, workers on an assembly line must function at the speed of the line, submitting to its repetitive physical and mental demands. When we drive a car, we're forced to focus our minds and bodily reactions on being at one with the road and the machine, following the curves, moving through the landscape at appropriate speeds. And the more we spend our lives in this manner, these interactions become the framework of our consciousness, awareness. Because technology is now everywhere, we lose awareness or consciousness of its presence. And while we walk on pavement or drive on a freeway or sit in a shopping center, we are unaware that we're enveloped by a technological and commercial reality, or that we're moving at technological speed. So we live our lives in reconstructed, human-created environments, and we are inside manufactured goods. Once we accept life within this technically mediated reality, we become less aware of anything that preceded it. We do not remember the land of forest and quiet. We get bored in that land. The information nature offers to our minds and senses is nearly absent from our lives, and it's little wonder that so many find it incomprehensible to choose to live within nature. Within each new generation of technology and each stage of technological expansion into our environments, we have fewer alternatives and become more deeply immersed within technological consciousness and have less freedom. Where creative evolving was once an interactive process between human beings and the natural unmediated world, creative evolving is now a process and interaction between human beings and their own artifacts. We are co-evolving with ourselves in a weird kind of interspecies incest. At each stage of the cycle, the changes come faster and are more profound. The web of interactions among the machine becomes more complex and more invisible, while the total effect is more pervasive. We become ever more enclosed and are less aware of that fact. Our environment is so much a product of our invention that it becomes a single worldwide machine. Technological changes proceed on so many fronts simultaneously, with new technologies constantly interweaving to create new potentialities, that there's no single focus, no center at which we can direct simple, pertinent questions to help us understand how it all works. The scale and complexity of these technologies make it difficult for us to grasp the big picture in assessing any individual technology. We use machines in our lives and evaluate them in terms of their usefulness to us personally, and we make little attempt to fathom the multiplicity of effects that computers or television or microwave ovens or cars may have on society, or more on our more than human life world. So we have a view of technology's impact that is much too personal and much too narrow. In the relatively few years that we've accelerated our separation from nature, our genetic and sensory evolution has not been able to keep pace with the evolution of the machine. In our new techno-oriented habitat, we have not yet noticed that the information of our senses is no longer invariably accurate. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last 9 years on this farm, is learning how to trust my senses again.
Mm-hmm.
Since the introduction of moving image media, the information of our senses, eyes especially, that we have always thought was accurate is maybe not so. The edited, recreated, reenacted, sped up, slowed down, manufactured imagery we see on television and in movies is not in the same category of imagery as actual birds flying in the sky. Failing to make that distinction, we all believe that what we see in the media is true and reliable as unmediated information. Compounding the problem is the fact that every technology presents itself in the best possible light. Every technology is invented for a purpose, and it announces itself in these terms, arriving on the scene as a friend to solve a problem. This machine will bring down an animal at 400 yards, and this one will move a boat through water at high speed, and this one will kill insects that destroy our food, and so on. So there is an inherent appeal in the very existence of machines that give us such promise.
Mm-hmm.
What's more, these machines usually do what they promise to do, which leaves us feeling pleased and depressed. It's not until much later, after technology has been around for a while, bringing it with it many other compatible technologies, that we realize a Faustian bargain was made way back when. So how do we counterbalance the appeal of the machine? Practice skepticism. The fifth agreement. And I think we'll stop there tonight, because we've got more.
Well,
So
digging out the weeds in our minds, in our lives, this is a big first step, I guess, is listening to this, paying attention, using this information to think about how we're living, what we're doing. And then there are other steps that will come, and let's tell people that we are facilitating that work of creating those steps, of doing that sacred work of putting something together, because we can all just sit and analyze, and that's what I think it's really special about us, about Aloha Nidao Living, is because you'll find so many writers and speakers that will give really good analysis about all of this, but that's where they stop. They never really put themselves into the position of, well, what am I going to do something about it? Of thinking that, oh, this is enough. Just pointing it out is enough.
Yeah.
Right? So let's invite people to do something about it, and check out the website, alohanidaloliving.com, where you will find certainly the answer to what can you do about all of this.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is first of all, developing a self-esteem to say no, I won't tolerate this anymore. No, I'm not going to tolerate, to have enough respect for yourself. And the thing is, the more we do this, like when we get into the caste system, I didn't put this in print, but there was a picture of Nazi Germany at one case where there was a parade or a gathering, and everyone was like, "Well, Hitler," and there was one man in the crowd who wasn't. One man. That's all it takes. The juntas of Argentina and Chile and Brazil and Bolivia and Uruguay, where they massacred, where they would just come in and grab. If communities would stand together and say, no, you take him, you're going to take all of us. But nobody's that willing to say that. Think about it. If we stopped and banded together and said, no, you want to take this person, you're going to take all of us. Do they really have the capability to take all of us? No, they don't. But we cower in fear.
Yeah, it's
because we,
my family's lived that, and yeah, it was not an easy time to be living.
I'm sure it wasn't. It makes me sick. It makes me puke to read about it. I cry and I puke, and I'm like, my God, how can we consider ourselves the most advanced species of? Because there is no wild species. There is no animal species on the face of nature that treats each other like the way we treat each other. And you know, the most horrible fact is that for the most of my life I didn't know about it, and 99.9% of Americans don't know about it. And you know, like a friend of mine said about the stealing of the gold and silver from the Incas, from all the native peoples at the time, from Cerro Rico. Well, so too bad they were so stupid they let it go. Excuse me? They were so stupid? No, they weren't stupid. They knew there was no value. They couldn't eat gold and silver. They just probably were quite befuddled by the people who valued gold and silver above 2,000, 3,000 varieties of Popeyes.
Yeah. Which they took some of those too.
Yeah, they took some of those too, but they quashed. I mean, it's, you know, it's just like you gotta look at priorities before you. Anyway.
Well,
this bloody abyss. I've had enough of it. It's time for us to have enough self-esteem to say no more. We won't tolerate this blood. And we say it's not being spilt. It's being spilt every day. It's just gone underground, so we don't really know about it. Guantanamo Bay, for one. It is still happening. Guatemala. What is happening in Guatemala? Right? I just learned about people that are imprisoned in Guatemala, still in jail cells too small for them to stand in or kneel in or lay down, and all they can do is stand. What the hell for?
Yeah, that's terrible. And so we're going to continue looking at the terrible things,
The abyss
And,
in the absence of the sacred, the bloody abyss
and it's gonna get bloodier, as you say.
will get very much bloodier.
Okay, so let's get ready for that, and get ready to traverse that, and hopefully get out of that. And this will be certainly one of those things that I believe has helped and will help in us as humanity getting through that.
We have to look at it. We have to be willing to look at it and go, no, realizing that it's so deep within us that it's going to take time to fully extract it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and process it and
process it, and
find confirmations of it outside of this, right? We actually
well, or to just say
find the
no.
evidence that it's out there, that this did happen, and it's not an invention of us. It's
Yeah,
real.
well, as soon as you're willing to say, is this really true? You'll be bombarded with information about it. That's how I
Mhm.
have found out in the last 8 years. What? Really? Really? This is true? And yeah, I'm being bombarded. Fire hose education with it. It's all out there.
Mm-hmm.
So
It is. So I can't say this is wonderful. No, this is pretty shocking and pretty tough things that we need to pay attention to, and we'll
and say
continue
no to.
that journey. And how can you say no to if you don't know what you're saying yes or no to? So that's why this is important.
Yes.
Mhm.
We have to look at it all, and this is why we are at the Owl Council House, or Owl Council House of Owl Council Fires, something like that, rather than Owl Dojos, because the owl sees through the darkness and can see the light.
Mhm.
So we're going to have to, right, walk up to the gates of hell. This is what a shaman does. Walk up to the gates of hell and immerse. Walk through the gates of hell and come out unscathed on the opposite side, but saying, no, no more, no more, no more, no more, no more, no more.
Mhm.
No more of this. No more. We will not tolerate this anymore.
Okay. So no, we're saying no, and let's invite people for the next conversation.
Right.
So see you next week, same time, for the next session on this saying no to these very tough things that we need to find out about.
Right. In the absence of the sacred, the bloody abyss.
Mhm.
The literally bloody abyss.
Yeah. Okay. Well, see you soon. See you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.